Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back. So today I have some new Profusion palettes that I just got in the mail, and rather than wait until my Sunday haul, I thought I would just film a video on them now and we can just check them out together, do like a little swatch party, and I can let you know my first initial impressions on these. So they do have a new one called Gold Rush, which is a very close dupe for the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette, so I'll be doing a comparison of that one. They also have a new palette called Nude Bliss, which looks very similar to the Norvina palette. And then there's one called Starlit too, which I'm not really sure if this is actually supposed to be a dupe for anything, but it is just a really pretty color story. And then we also have some of these little monochromatic palettes. We have the emeralds, the mauves or mauves. I always get corrected no matter which way I say it. And then we have the violets palette. So I thought quickly I would just go through the Gold Rush palette because I know a lot of you guys are wondering if this is a dupe for Naked Honey. I'm wearing it on my eyes today actually, and when I posted this on Instagram, I got just tons of interest on it. So I'll show you a quick close-up of what the palette actually looks like. It's a 21 shade palette, which they do have many different versions of on their website. It does come with a really nice brush as well, and just the overall vibe of this palette is very yellowy, and it's just like the warm honey browns, just like the Urban Decay Naked Honey. So here's a look at some swatches. I felt like it swatched okay. Not my favorite, and I don't know if it's just me personally, but for some reason I feel like Profusion's quality of the shadows is kind of going downhill a little bit. And again, I don't know if that's just because I've been trying a lot of really stellar eyeshadow formulas lately, so that's my perspective on it, or if something has changed with the formula. But I also have noticed when I open these palettes for the first time that they have kind of like a little bit of a chemical smell, and I don't ever remember that happening in the past. I tried to look at the ingredient list on the back of the newer palettes versus the old ones, and I really didn't see like a whole lot of difference in the core formula. I know like they're all different because different shades can be formulated different ways, so it kind of depends. But the basic main ingredients are still the same. They both mostly have talc, mica, magnesium stearate, calcium, sodium, borosilicate, and then mineral oil. And then after that, sometimes the ingredients can be different. So I have no idea what's going on with the formula, again, if it is a change or if it's just me. But I know I'm definitely not imagining that smell when I open the palettes, so there's that. So anyway, now that I went off on a tangent, let's go ahead and take a look at it next to the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. So here are the two palettes side by side. Obviously, Naked Honey has a lot less shades in it, but you can definitely see that they have the same vibe going on. And then when you look at swatches as well, I was able to match up pretty much every shade in the Naked Honey palette really closely with this one. Again, I think the Urban Decay formula is definitely superior. So if the Naked Honey is in your budget at all, I would not hesitate to buy this one, especially if you like this color story. It's one of my favorite palettes because it enables me to get a warm tone look that's not too dark. So if you have more of a fair to light skin tone, you'll find that you can use pretty much all the shades in here. But that being said, if this palette is never and will never be in your budget, I think this is a pretty decent option. I did use it on my eyes today, and while I don't think that the formula is as good, I think it's workable. It's not like the Milani Gilded palettes that I've had so much trouble with, where it's like so powdery and nothing sticking to your eyes. I was able to create this look with no primer, and I think if I had used primer, especially under the shimmer shade, it would have popped even that much more, but I didn't have any issues even without primers. I just found that it took like a little bit more building up than it would have if I used this one, but I think it blended really nicely. I do really like their mattes. I think their matte formula is very, very good. The shimmer shades can be very hit or miss. Some of them are great, like the one that I used on my lid today, I had no issues with it, but some of their shimmer shades can be a little bit more like flaky and crumbly. So with those, I would definitely recommend using them over a primer. All right, so next let's talk about this Nude Bliss palette. So when I first posted this on Instagram, a lot of you guys were saying, is it a dupe for Huda's new nudes? But when I put those two side by side, I really didn't see it. This one has a lot more neutrals in it. That one's just a lot more pinkish overall. So then I thought about it a little more and I realized what this was reminding me of, and it is the Norvina palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. And when it comes to this one, I actually just had to close the lid because the chemical smell in this one is so much worse than any of the other ones for some strange reason. It's terrible. So let me go ahead and quickly show you some swatches. And I also found the formula on this one to be not that great. Like you can see that it's just very, very sheer overall. Even the mattes, which I normally like in Profusion's formula, didn't perform very well for me. And if you tried to compare it to the Norvina palette, it's like there's no comparison because this one is just very, very lackluster. And I haven't tried this one on my eyes yet, but just from swatching it, I noticed a definite difference between this and the Gold Rush. And I just don't feel like this one's going to apply well to my eyes. Again, I don't know 100%, but that's just kind of my strong feeling based on the way that it's swatched. Not to mention with something that has that heavy of a chemical smell to it, I'm not really likely to want to put it on my eyes anyway. Next up, we have the Starlit palette. This one is really beautiful. I really like the color story in here with the dusty pinks and then those pops of green as well. This one has a lot of pressed glitters. You have 7 of them, which, you know, those are wasted shades for me, but if you do like pressed glitters, then I feel like the glitters are pretty nice. They're really pigmented as well, which you'll see in the swatches. I'll go ahead and put those up. I couldn't swatch the whole palette on my arm, so this is the first half of the palette that you're seeing, and then I'll show you the second half. And I felt like the formula of this one seems pretty decent too. It's in line with the Gold Rush. I felt like it was a lot better than the Nude Bliss, so I'm definitely interested in playing around with this one and testing out some looks. All right, so then let's go into these little mini palettes. The first one we have is Violets, and this one is really pretty. I like that they didn't go full on monochromatic with it, because that's one thing I don't really care for with the ColourPop ones, is that they're just like, they're all the same color, and that's not me. Usually I like to anchor an eyeshadow look with something more neutral and then add some color to it. So I like that this one has that medium brown shade, and I think the formula of these is actually really, really good. And I've consistently noticed that the smaller ones are a little bit better formula-wise than the larger palettes. I'm not quite sure why that is, but it's just historically been the case with Profusion. So when I first saw this one, I thought that it looked a little bit like the Huda Beauty Amethyst Obsessions palette, and when I look at them side by side, I do see a couple of shades that look similar, but the overall vibe of the Profusion one is different because you do have the neutral in there, and you also have a gold shimmer and a champagne shimmer and that really light pale pink and the light lavender matte as well, which the Huda doesn't have. I don't find those to be super duper close. So then I compared it to the Just My Pleasure palette from ColourPop, and this one seems like actually it's a lot closer in tone. I was able to find very, very similar shades when I swatched them side by side. I could see like a lot of similarities between these two, but again, they're not exact dupes because the Profusion palette does have like the brown in it, and even though ColourPop does have a brown, it's like more of a pinky brown, whereas the Profusion one is a little bit more of like a warm brown. But they do have kind of a similar vibe going on. Next up we have the Mauves palette, and this one is really beautiful as well. I tend to gravitate towards these dusty pink shades. I don't necessarily like a red eye because I feel like it makes me look sick, but there's something about the dustier pink shades that tend to work well with my skin tone. I think because I have a little bit more of a cooler pink undertone. And formula-wise, this one felt really nice too. Again, I like the mattes a little bit more than the shimmers. I felt like the shimmers probably need to be built up a little bit or applied over primer just to give them a little bit more depth. But they had a nice soft buttery feel. They didn't feel flaky or anything like that. And this one I actually did think looked similar to the Huda Beauty Mauve Obsessions palettes. They do seem to have a lot of really similar shades going on between the two of them. Again, I think the Huda formula is superior to the Profusion one, but if Huda is not in your budget, I do think that this is a pretty solid option. And then last but not least, we have the Emeralds palette. So this one, oh my gosh, gorgeous greens. Again, I love that they didn't go full monochromatic with it. You have a really nice brown transition shade in this one. You have some golds to play with, which I think go really well with green. So I feel like if you're putting green in your crease and you didn't want to do too much green on your eyes, you could always pair it with a gold, or if you did the brown in your crease, you could pretty much use any other shade in the palette with that. So I do like that they added a little bit of variety to this one. And just for comparison's sake, here it is next to the ColourPop Just My Luck palette. Just My Luck has a deep kind of olivey brown in it, but it doesn't have that brown transition color, so that is one thing that you're missing. With the ColourPop one, you're pretty much just stuck with using all green no matter what if you get this palette, so it doesn't have the same versatility that the Emerald palette has. But at the same time, I do like ColourPop's formula a little bit better, so there's kind of some trade-offs there. Alright guys, so anyway, those are my thoughts on these new Profusion palettes. Oh, and I forgot to mention one thing about this Starlit palette. On the back, there are 7 shades in here that say that they're pressed pigments not intended for use in the immediate eye area. And I was blown away by that because I didn't realize that Profusion was doing that as well. And then I went back to the Love Struck palette because this one came out a couple weeks ago now, and this one also has a ton of shades in it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 shades in this palette are pressed pigment. I didn't even realize that when I first got this palette. So that is a real bummer because, I mean, I don't care if they could potentially be safe. If there's even a chance that they're not, I'm not messing with my eyes and I'm not using those shades. So I feel like 13 out of, how many shades are in here? 35, I think. So, I mean, 13 shades out of 35 I can't use in this one. 7 out of 35 I can't use in this one. Actually, more than that because there's 7 pressed glitters. So that's kind of a disappointment to me. So as long as we're talking about things I didn't like about these palettes, I would say that the Nude Bliss palette was definitely disappointing just based on how sheer it was, and then the chemical smell that these are giving off. Now it's only the larger palettes that's doing that, not the little ones. So at least, I mean, I would say the winners for me are definitely these right here, just because I do like the formula a little better than the larger ones. And I mean, Gold Rush is a pretty decent option for the Naked Honey palette if it's totally not in your budget. But if it is, I would just go with the Naked Honey palette because I think the formula is superior. It blends really nicely on the eyes. I've had no issues with it. I think it's actually one of Urban Decay's better formulas that they've ever had. Whereas with this one, I mean, I did get a pretty decent eye look out of it, but it's a little bit tougher just to build up the shades and everything. But that being said, $13 is a lot better price than 50 something, whatever that one is. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And also, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below on all of these palettes. If you're planning on picking any of them up, I know some of you mentioned to me on Instagram that you've already seen them in Walmart. So I'd be curious if any of you guys have tried any of them. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button before you go, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.